Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Jamie Dawn, your professional psychic advisor, success coach, evolutionary, revolutionary astrologer, bringing you your celestial wisdom for the week of January 31st through February 7th, 2021. And this is such another pretty interesting week. I mean, January, I don't know, craziness, right? I mean, it has been intense energy. We're coming off of a full moon in Leo. I'm actually recording this video the day before, and a lot of you are reporting in that there is intensity, there's some real push for greater communication as well as connection, which is a big theme for 2021. And we're finding ways to connect with each other, whether it's through Zoom or it's through the internet, social media still, or many of us are now connecting in person and obviously finding safe ways in which to do that. There's still a lot of shifting sands and changes that continue to permeate us. And I think most everybody who is watching this, and thank you for your comments and for liking, subscribing, and sharing these videos, but most of you are reporting in that change is happening fast. And many of us are needing to react or respond pretty quickly to circumstances and things as they come up. And a lot of that was due, especially in January, with the squares happening with Jupiter and Saturn to Mars. And Mars is still in Taurus. And so it's going to continue to feel some of that pressure, even though it's moving away from Jupiter and Saturn. It is continuing to create that urgency or that drive to get certain things done, to see results. And so we're feeling that as we move into February. But for those of you who are tracking this, Mercury is now retrograde. I'm going to talk about that in this video. But I would say that the big theme for this particular week is really Venus. So I just want to talk about her for just a moment, this beautiful planet of love and beauty, harmony, art, peace, values, finances, relationships, things like that, and money. And, the reason that money is associated with Venus, in my interpretation, is that if you want to know where people place their values, see where they spend their money. And so Venus rules our value system and wants to bring out the things that we emphasize, how we approach relationships, and the things that give us pleasure. And so if you're looking at it from a tangible standpoint, money often is the expression of what we find value in. Some of us don't spend money, but that doesn't mean Venus isn't influencing it, because what we value is frugality or simplicity, or the non-material world, and others love the bling and the showmanship and the flair and the artfulness of it, right? Well, Venus is often activated in us where we act it out when we compromise, when we make peace, when we're loving or seductive. But on the negative side, Venus also, we can be self-indulgent, self-centered, maybe superficial and vain. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at when we are looking at relationships, or we're looking at, like I say, the financial piece and money and where we're putting our value system. Well, with Venus moving into Aquarius this week, she moves in on the 1st of February. So we're kicking off the month right with Venus. We're going to be approaching our relationships and our values with more of an open mind, maybe looking for the like-minded individuals in our lives that we can share ideas that have a common system or a common value to them, and then can be of benefit to our local community, maybe even our families, and we're going to be looking at systems and processes that we are attracted to. The other thing that we may find is that if we're using money as the example, as a representation of our values, that we may be investing in the unusual places that create more openness, more opportunity for us to come together and to share in a team-like setting, because Aquarius wants equality. We may also be more attracted to the unusual relationships, or we attract those unusual relationships or people in our lives during this time. So you may find yourself, in January, we took relationships a little more serious with Venus in Capricorn. Now we may say, I kind of like the unusual thing. So if you're in a bonded relationship, you and your partner may decide to take on something a little different than you normally would. Maybe your approach to relationship issues or where you want to spend your money, you may think out of the box, and you may be bumping up against a decision that you would maybe traditionally have dealt with, that now you're like, can we think of another resource, another way, another solution that could come into play to help us resolve this, or to help us with creating more connection in the relationship? The other thing, and you don't, the singles out there, the Venus in Aquarius could offer you an attraction to maybe somebody different than you would normally attract. And that, especially if you have been in the dating world for a while, could be very refreshing, because that definition of insanity where you repeat something over and over again but expect a different result. You're probably tired, probably exhausted from, doing the same thing, or finding yourself in the same pattern of attraction, or who you're attracted to, that now you're willing to open your mind up a bit and say, all right, so I'll go out with somebody older or younger, or somebody from a different background than me. Or maybe you had a type and now you're ready to expand that and say, you know what, it doesn't matter if they don't look a certain way or have a certain amount in their bank account, whatever, and I'm willing to think differently around it. There's also an opportunity of objectivity that comes into play with Venus and Aquarius. So whether you're single or bonded, you may appreciate the opportunity to look at a subject or to look at another person more objectively, so that there's not so much projection put onto them or the relationship, but it's more like, do you have what I need, and do I have what you need, and does it line up? Great, check, check, check. And the other thing is that intellectual conversations may be very stimulating for you, and you can appreciate these higher ordeals. So if you are looking at your relationships, whether it's personal, professional, romantic, whatever, you may take a different approach that's more intellectual, if you will. Do be careful about acting or sounding superior to others, because that is something that may show up as well when you're dealing with particular issues. So if you are trying to share your ideas with somebody and they disagree, or you're just standing on a different platform, if you will, very often with Venus and Aquarius, it could have you, all of us, I'll include myself in that, sounding as if we know better, or like this is how it should happen. And it can get a little bit of a condescending tone to it. Objectivity really is a key strength here with the Venus and Aquarius. And so it can allow you to make decisions based on logic versus emotion. We've had a lot of emotions that get stirred up, and emotions are important for us as human beings, but if they are the only way in which we govern our decision-making process, very often it feels willy-nilly, it feels, chaotic. It changes with the wind. Emotions are very much like nature. They change. So here we have Venus in Aquarius giving us more logic-based decisions, and that is more sustainable, because that's what we're looking for right now, especially in the middle of all this change that's happening. Friendships also, for those of you who are looking at transitioning, or your relationships, or maybe you're just going to have a sudden surprise where friendship with someone could offer romance. There's also this feeling that if you are in a bonded relationship, that you're able to look at your partner and see them not just as your lover, but also as your best friend. So there's a real emphasis around friendship and love and bonding together from I'll call it agape place, versus the eros place that often happens. Now let's talk about Mercury retrograde, because here's this Venus theme bringing in relationships, values, finances, that sort of thing. Mercury retrograde, it happens 3 times a year. It's retrograding in Aquarius, so it's going to be moving back all the way to the 15th degree. And we're going to be revisiting. So think of the REs, as I mentioned in my video before. We're going to be revisiting, reevaluating, resurrecting, redoing all kinds of subject matters. And there's a lot more internal dialogue that will probably go on, but we'll use the example of Venus in relationships. If there's a friendship that turned romantic that then suddenly ended, you may be revisiting that and coming back to it and say, hey, can we redo it in a different way? And you may go back into the romantic side of it, but the mindset, and consider this, all this Aquarian energy is very mental energy. The mindset that you have, which can drive our behaviors, could shift in a way that allows you to feel more more open to exploring the relationship and allowing it to just take its natural course. The other thing with Mercury retrograde is that it does affect us all very differently, and that, think back to the middle to end of January. So these last couple of weeks, we will be revisiting some of those subject matters and communication. So Mercury rules communication, how we process information. It can go a little sideways. It can create confusion and misunderstanding. So if you're revisiting an issue and it doesn't seem clear, or what you thought was clear suddenly isn't, please be patient, stay with it, create a little spaciousness for the next couple weeks as Mercury is asking you to go more inside of you and say, why am I perceiving this as a bad thing, or something that maybe I'm taking it personally, or I think somebody is attacking me, or they said one thing and what I read was very different. I don't know how many times I can sit down at an email or a text message or something of that nature, and I read it and I come to a conclusion, or I make an assumption by the first time I read it. And when I go back and reread it, I probably skipped over a word that completely changed the energy of, or the intention of that particular message. And so now I'm having to go back and go, oops, that's not really what they meant. And I made the assumption. So what I would say is, please just remember, not everything is as it appears to be. And so giving yourself permission to create a little space, revisit the text, the email, the phone call, whatever. If you aren't clear when a question is asked, ask for the space. Delays are part of a Mercury retrograde. It could be delays in transportation. So if you're traveling, create a little space for possibility of not, let's say if you're flying, you may have to miss that flight, or you may have to wait an extra half an hour before you actually get there. You may run late, whatever. If you're driving, make sure that your transportation is up to speed. And if something happens out of the blue that you really can't predict, then you just respond and can continue to keep your sense of humor. There needs to be a bit of a lightness here when there's these delays, because getting upset about it isn't going to resolve the issue. The other thing is, you may notice that others are pretty edgy during a Mercury retrograde, and especially if things don't go their way, if the internet's not working, because we're doing so much online now, that creates a lot of tension, and how people deal with tension. It's very different, and we can have a misstep. We can say things that we regret, and we have to go back and apologize. I think, if you have a forgiveness practice like I do, using it regularly is probably a rule of thumb during the Mercury retrograde. And also being really self-compassionate with yourself, because, the mental fogginess is going to be there. And if it happens to affect you, be gracious with yourself. We are also between a full moon and a new moon week. And so we're going to have the sun squaring off with Mars and the moon in Scorpio on Wednesday this week, which makes a fixed T-square temporarily for about that day. And so there's an intensity to it with are we being stubborn where we need to be more flexible, or are we pushing for results and wanting to have it our way, and making sure that there's a bit of a control thing that starts to show up, and because we want to feel safe. And in the middle of all this change, it's very difficult sometimes to feel safe when it's constantly changing. And with this fixed T-square, we're going to want to have some sense of stability. So where can we find that? And often we may push to find results to give us something tangible that says, okay, this is real, I can trust it, I feel safe, versus stepping back and saying, what's true in this moment is this. And when it changes, I can still stay safe within myself. We've done a lot of practicing around trusting our inner wisdom, trusting ourselves, and coming back to really getting to know ourselves. This is one of the reasons I love astrology, is because it's a tool for self-awareness. And so we can come back and say, okay, what is true in this moment is this. When something changes, I will respond based on that present moment. And so it's a constant, dance that we're doing. But I would say that Wednesday this week, Tuesday into Wednesday, will feel pretty intense about getting fixed on a situation or an idea. And it's sort of like, it needs to be this way. It's a very strong, decisive time. So if there's a decision that you've been sort of waffling and not sure, is it the right way? I'm not sure which way to go. This may be a time for you just to make the decision, and remember you can adjust along the way afterwards. This isn't about perfection. I'm going to remind us of that too. This is about excellence. So give yourself permission to just go, okay, this is what I'm doing. Here's Venus, our theme, so if it's relationships or values or money, I'm just going to make the decision with it, and then I'll figure it out as I go along. Venus is also going to canoodle Saturn while these two, Venus and Saturn, trine, make this harmonious aspect to the North Node. So, and that I feel is going to offer us, I'll say it this way, destiny. It gives us destiny in a long-term effect. So the decisions that we're making can most likely give us over time some results that we attract through not just our mind, but hopefully through our hearts as well. But we're probably going to establish some new ideas and rules that help to build long-term relationships and long-term stability in relationships. And this is professional and personal as we go along. Staying open-minded and curious here with this harmonious aspect to the North Node, that can actually attract people and circumstances that add some new responsibilities. I understand adding these responsibilities can also trigger some feelings of inadequacy, or questions, are we going to be capable enough to fulfill these responsibilities? But over time, and this is where trust gets built, it's trust is built over time and repetition and testing, that you'll be able to trust yourself that much more. Remember, the universe brings you opportunities for you to try on, to say yes to, and and because you're ready. I really believe that we're not given more than we can handle. And we do have a choice. These are choice points that get made. It's possible that during this week, you'll find this new path that you get set on. So especially those of you who are maybe looking for a new job or a new relationship, like I mentioned, this is an unusual time. Aquarius likes the unusual, likes the innovative, the sort of outlier, if you will. So if you are trying to get another job or relationship, think outside your industry, or think outside the box, if you will. This is a perfect time for you to do that. The other thing is, this week we're going to have Venus squaring, so creating a hard aspect to Uranus, our planet of sudden changes and surprises. But Uranus is also the ruler of Aquarius, and Venus is in Aquarius. And so we're going to probably be busting through some of the status quo. So again, more of that more of that emphasis on thinking out of the box. So status quo, busting through when it comes to relationships and values and finances. And this is a time where we can evaluate and reevaluate, because of Mercury retrograde, where we may have gotten complacent in our lives. I know change is constantly happening, but there's change happening in most likely one or two areas, not every area of our lives. So being able to have that moment where we stop and say, okay, I've been too complacent with my health, or I've been too complacent with spending, or I've been too complacent with, um, communication, right? So these could be, this week could give us an opportunity to look at where we may have uh, gotten too comfortable, and we need to step out of our comfort zone. And with Uranus involved, it most likely is going to show up without us planning for it or predicting it. Remember the shadow side of Venus: jealousy, manipulation, vanity, all of that can be triggered, especially if our values clash with somebody else, or we get news about a friend or a lover or a coworker and it catches us off guard, so we could react. So there is that possibility as well. Um, but in order to free ourselves from this need to conform, we we may need to really own and enjoy and express our own ideas in an own unique way. So keep that in mind. This is about us being able to uh, be ourselves, but also to welcome other ideas and stay open minded. So keep that as you go about this week, that when these sudden changes, these sudden outbursts, or sudden information comes in, pause, take a step back. Mercury retrograde is going to be perfect for that, and really give yourself permission um, to create a little spaciousness. So if I can give you a theme, not only is it Venus, but also creating a little spaciousness in your daily life, in your busyness, and when you're triggered suddenly by a status quo moment that needs to be busted through, that will give you a chance to stay stable. That will give you that moment to check in with your truth and your values and keep coming back to that. I love value-based coaching because when I'm working with a client, and I like to ask that question, what value can you hold to as you make this decision so that you have no regrets? So keep coming back to that. We may be reevaluating our values during this time, and that's a good thing so that it can secure it that much more. And maybe we got complacent we assumed that we always had that particular value, and now we need to either confirm it and shore it up that much more, or we need to shift it slightly and open up a little bit so that we can welcome others into our lives in a deeper, more meaningful way. Okay, you guys, I hope this video helps, and please find me at jamiedawn.com, and I look forward to connecting with you. And always, it's a joy and pleasure to keep up with how things are going. So like, comment, share, subscribe. Take care, everybody.